welcome back to another episode of Speaking Saturdays. So let's begin with part one. Do you like talking to strangers? That depends on my mood. Sometimes I do, sometimes I think it's an annoyance. It depends again also on the type of conversation. If it's just somebody on the street and they're like, they want to talk to you about some kind of project or, hey, here's a credit card you should apply for, that type of thing, then I just, like when I'm outside, I have my earphones in all the time. So nobody really bothers me for like random chit chat. But I mean, you could, like let's say you're doing some kind of course. Obviously, these people on day one, they're going to be strangers to you. But you could, form an association, a friendship, an acquaintance with this person. You get to know them. Naturally, you have to talk to people to get to know them. So it depends on the kind of stranger, depends on what they want to talk about, depends on my mood as well. What was the last conversation you had? So the last conversation that I had, if you mean with a stranger, was definitely yesterday when my mom and I went out to buy groceries, and we came across this woman that we had met the very first day that we moved here to this new place where we live. And she wanted to I don't know, she was very curious. She wanted to know who we are, what we were doing, and, just random things and getting to know each other type of thing. Because she lives in the neighborhood and, we went to the same grocery store. So, yeah, I didn't really, like my mom was talking to her actually. I wasn't doing that much talking, to be honest. I mean, she would ask me questions and I would respond. I didn't really ask any questions back, which is probably, I should have asked a couple questions too, but honestly, I didn't care. I didn't want to know about her because we didn't have anything in common. You see what I mean? It depends on the kind of conversation. So, I mean, if it was someone my age, maybe I would have responded differently. Do you discuss politics with your friends? Why not? I don't see a problem with that. And I have people from from all over the political spectrum in my friend circle. So, just because you have a different view on how a country should be run or how governments should operate doesn't mean that you cannot respect each other's point of view, doesn't mean that you cannot support each other in other ways. I think it's very unnecessary how people have become very polarized these days. I think it's quite harmful, but obviously there are people, organizations that benefit from, making us hate each other just because of our political views. So yeah, I definitely do. I think it's a nice topic. I don't think it's true that you shouldn't talk about religion and politics. I think you should. I think that's how you actually form a deep association, a deep friendship. Are families in your country very talkative? Oh my God, yes, for sure. They are. It's kind of a trope that it depends on the region though. Like it depends. Like in the north and the west, definitely I think being, talkative, loud and proud, I think that's very much the norm. Again, I'm not saying it's like a bad thing, but it is something that I like a lot of peace and quiet. So I cannot tolerate when people around me are very noisy. But yeah, some people live life large, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You want to, again, depends on when, let's say I lived in a different place a while ago and people there were very, very talkative. You could, even in your own apartment, you could hear people talking outside, talking on the same floor, talking on the floor above you. Oh my God, it was too much. It was overwhelming for me personally. But, it is what it is. Okay, now we're going to try section 2. And let's see what we have here. Oh, that's a fun question. Describe a creative person whose work you admire. You should tell me who is he or she, how do you know about him or her, what creative things has he or she done, and explain why you think he or she is creative. My first instinct was to talk about a band that I like a lot lately, but of course I'm going to stick to a person instead. Ever since I was a teenager, I've always admired Amy Lee of Evanescence. And I'll tell you why, because I think she's had a formative, role to play. Of course, I mean, the kinds of artists that you discover in your childhood and your teen years, they do tend to have a disproportionate impact on you, and for me as well. That has been the case because I think I was 12 and a half maybe 12 and a half, 13, when I heard an Evanescence song for the first time. And I was, like many other people, entirely just blown away, by her voice. I just thought, wow, this is amazing. And then I found out that she was not just the singer. No, she wrote the lyrics, she composed music, played the piano, so many things, that she had. Because, normally a singer is just that. But no, she was doing a lot more than just that. She was one half of the band, and then the other band member left, and there was some drama, but let's not get into that. So I discovered, I'm not sure exactly who recommended, because again, it was just the internet. I was browsing the internet. I came across a song I liked, and that's, how I discovered Evanescence, and more specifically Amy Lee, because a lot of people will say, oh, it's a band, everyone's important, but honestly, all the band members are all different except for her. So, I'm here for the Amy Lee show. When I listen to an Evanescence song, that's who I, want to hear from. That's the person whose, work I want to listen to. I don't care too much about the other band members, and that might sound awkward, weird. But again, listen, you have to understand the band's history is very complicated. There's no original band member left except for Amy. So, and she inspired me to start singing, to start writing lyrics and poetry, even the piano. I purchased a keyboard for myself a couple years ago, and I've started working on, I'm not very regular, but that's the person that lit that creative spark. So yeah, it's funny because it happened like 17, 18 years ago, when I first discovered Evanescence, when I first discovered Amy Lee. But yeah, even today, I mean, they don't put out, to be fair, she's not very productive. They have put out like 4 albums in 22 years. That's not a lot of output, but I mean, the last album personally for me was kind of a disappointment, to be honest. But again, it's, I admire the melodies, the lyric writing, presentation, so many things about this person. And, she's been very inspiring to me. So yeah, it's not just that, she sings or writes lyrics or plays the piano. She does a lot more. She plays the harp. She is a visual artist as well, designs clothes and stuff. So she does a lot. And now we go on to part 3. There we go. Oh, this is a fun topic. Do you consider yourself a creative person? Yes, I absolutely do. I think being creative is a big part of my identity. That's how I see myself, as a creative first and teacher second. I think teaching is also creating. I mean, like right now I am creating something, right? So I do have like creative blocks as well, where I cannot create the things that I normally do. I mean, I love, for example, writing poetry. I do that, and I do it well as well. Not just like some modernist garbage or whatever. But real good high quality stuff. And I love like making little tunes on my keyboard. I love doing that. I have GarageBand on my MacBook, and I love playing around, tinkering with that. I love baking. So yeah, I am definitely, kind of, in many ways, both positive and negative, kind of an archetype of this typical creative person, the good and the bad. Is it good for children to make art? I think it's a must. I think children are just naturally drawn to all forms of art. And you have to make an active effort to pull them away. That's unnatural. I don't think that's a good thing. So, you should let them experiment. Like when I was a child, my parents they got me all these drawing books, coloring books, painting stuff, and I just loved doing all of that. And then they'd, hang my works, on the fridge and on the walls and stuff like that. So I think it helps them to express themselves in many different ways, see what they're good at as well. Do they like making music? Do they like making other forms of art? Do they like writing? Stuff like that. I think when you're a child is a prime age to start discovering all these skills and talents that you might have. And even if the child does not, continue with whatever they started, that's okay. That's not like a bad thing or something. Again, because childhood is that one period of life where you have like zero responsibility. So it's a great time to discover art. What types of jobs require people to be creative? Creativity is not just being artistic. Being artistic and being creative are two different things. A lot of people confuse the two. Like, let's say you're a business person. you need creativity. You're a salesperson, you need to be creative. You're anything at all. You're a chef, you need to be creative. There's no job where you don't really require creativity. So this idea that we have that creativity is related to the arts, I think that's wrong. I think that's incorrect. If you really think about it, all humans are in some way, shape, or form creativity, because in my view, at least, I think intelligence and creativity are linked to each other. They are connected. They are related to each other. I think being creative, being able to essentially, for example, come up with solutions to problems, right? That sort of thing is a necessary skill. You cannot survive without that, right? So every human being is creative. They're just creative in different ways. Do you think leaders need creativity? Absolutely. You don't want a leader that's not creative. You don't want a leader that cannot think, that cannot invent, that cannot create. Because again, creativity, like I was saying, it's also about coming up with solutions to problems. And what is the job of a leader? That's literally the job of a leader, is to lead the people down the right path, to come up with solutions to problems. That's what their job is. So if they're not creative, they're not fit for the job. There's absolutely no question about the fact that if you are not just a political leader, but also the leader of, let's say an organization, a company, there are so many problems to solve every day. So many new things to come up with, new ways of doing things that are more efficient, that are more useful, that are just plain better. So yes, absolutely. I think leaders do need to be creative. Otherwise, it's bad news. Okay, so that was our speaking test for today. Don't forget to check back in next week, or maybe in a couple days, because we're going to do Writing Wednesdays as well, and you don't want to miss out on the essay that I'm going to write. So I'll see you later. Bye-bye.